Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. This is the JRPG Report, episode 187, and it is unlike any podcast that we've done before, well, except for the other Mailbag shows. That's right, we're going to answer a few questions because as we speak, I should be dipping my toes in some water, sand, or propped up and relaxing of some sorts. I'm on vacation, so I'm speaking to you from the future. Hopefully Lavos has not emerged from a 65 million year slumber and it's the end of times. Other than that, I wish you are well and everything is good in your world. It is fine in mine. We don't have very many questions. I posted this probably a little bit too late and I needed to have a quick turnaround and record this, but we do have some fun things to talk about. And I can kind of fill some time, maybe speculate a bit on where we want to see the podcast go here in a short amount of time. We'll do that after some questions, but thanks for everybody who submitted a question. And I enjoy doing these. Maybe we'll do this a little more often in the future. Excuse me, my voice is trying to die a horrific death. I recorded podcast this morning and seasonal allergies. I have fall allergies. I guess most people probably have more in the spring, but the fall hits me hard and I'd rather not. But Jeff had, I guess, 2 questions and I really don't have a great answer for one of them. So let's knock it out. He just asked any recommendations on short JRPGs or RPGs in general. Curious if you know any that I don't. I probably don't. Short JRPGs or even RPGs in general are rare. Kind of by definition, JRPGs tend to be long, drawn out affairs. We have a $1 per hour spent. That's a good indicator of worth. So it feels like a good game kicks in around 60 hours in or so, and then we've had some ones that go infinitely longer than that. So obviously we want to stay away from our 100-hour specials of your Dragon Quest 11s and Persona 5s and games of that caliber. But just generally speaking, and Jeff, I don't know if you play these or not, but a game that we talked about on the last podcast is the Atelier series in general are shorter games, maybe some longer than others, but they kind of just tell a lighthearted tale, get in and get out. You can put plenty of time into it, but on a JRPG scale, they are a bit shorter. I might recommend those to you if you've not played them all, but yeah, it's hard to really think about ones that are shorter, maybe more episodic ones could be, but unfortunately, that's kind of just something that goes along with the territory. And if there are some shorter ones, maybe you guys can comment below the sums that you would recommend, but I don't really have anything to add to that. I'm sorry. But he did follow up with a really good question that I'd like to speak on. He says, would you rather pay full price for a 8 to 10 hour AAA 10 out of 10 game, so a short game but perfection, right? Or pay full price for a 50-hour mediocre / okay game? So they're both full price. You're not getting one on sale as opposed to the other one. And my motto has always been less is more. And generally speaking, I feel there is a certain expectation. So asking that question, you're kind of eliminating a lot of RPGs on that 10-hour scale, if not all, right? But the game I could put in context that is a shorter game like that are excellent. Like I just played, not long ago, I played Resident Evil 2, the remake. Full price for it. Fantastic. Very short game. I like God of War. There are fantastic short games that are tens, that are full price, that I would absolutely rather pay for and be a short, incredible experience as opposed to, yeah, this game is longer, but do I even like it? And am I going to sit here and slodge through it just because I paid money for it when I really don't like it? I.e. Tales of Zestiria. Didn't care for it. Paid full price for it. So by gosh, I sat through that and got all the way to the end and didn't like any of it because I paid full price and it was a 50 or more hour, longer game. Going back to your previous question, Tales games are a little bit shorter, typically, especially Arise. As you're probably finding out, it's a little bit on the shorter scale, so maybe that's something else. But you probably already know, obviously, those games. But yeah, I think that shorter is better. I've played plenty of great shorter JRPGs that I enjoyed quite a bit, and then even perfect gaming experiences like Persona 5 could have been about 20 hours shorter, and it would have been just fine. There's nothing worse than a game that drags on too long. So that's the opposite of, is it too short or is it too long? Just keeps on going and going and going. On the other side of that, I'm near the end of Tales of Arise, and it feels short. I wish it was a bit longer. But I'm finding plenty of things to do at the end. I guess that kind of makes up for it in a way. So I hope that answers your question. That's the best I can do. So, Man Thing on Twitter wants to know my personal highs and lows for TGS. Also, what were some of the titles that you're most excited for? Most excited was the one that we just talked about with Sophie 2. I did not see that one coming. I haven't played the first one, but as a pretty big Atelier fan, I am quite looking forward to it and seeing the changes that we talked about, that the battle system being 6 people total, but kind of working in pairs, front and the back. I'm curious to see how that works. I'm curious to see how the seamless battle system works, whereas you see the enemy and you go straight into battle. There's no loading screen. That's only been done a couple of times and not always to the best. We thought Tales was going to be that way, right? It turned out it wasn't. There wasn't a ton of things that we didn't already know about that wasn't already excited for. I guess overall, I'm a bit disappointed, and I feel like it's not completely TGS's fault. I mean, E3 was a bit disappointing. Gamescom was a bit disappointing, and that is because they're virtual events. When you take, if you think back to E3s of yesteryear in particular, where you had crowds and you had these announcements and you had the shocked face, like, oh, whoa, those, jaw-dropping moments are eliminated completely with virtual events, right? They are just videos, which is what we look at all the time anyway, and that kind of takes away from trade shows. It completely loses anything that it used to do. Now, these are good ways of having live stream events and giving longer forums to showcase developers in the spotlight, and that's great. But if I look back over the last 2 podcasts, there's not a whole lot of things that I'm excited about because A, we already knew about it, and B, the things that we would like to know more about. So let's say Dragon Quest 12, let's say Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, Final Fantasy 16. Those were not there at all. Eden Chronicles, not there. Not counting that other offshoot game. We're not talking about it. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. Some of these big games that should be closer to the horizon were not even there. Were not even mentioned. So we knew the outline of the show even beforehand. So what was there to really get excited about when not much is coming, right? It was a bit of a double-edged sword of maybe Sophie 2 was the most thing to get excited about because it was a mystery tile that we didn't know was coming. So I am overall disappointed, but I've been disappointed for the past 2 years in these big event shows. The ones that come out of nowhere are what gets us excited. Overall, I'm very excited for the games that are coming out for PlayStation 5 in the future, but they weren't there this year, and there's no real indication of when they're going to be there. We hear rumors of Final Fantasy 16 is getting close to completion. Tell me a game that's close to completion that skips the trade show, the big annual trade show event in any form whatsoever. That doesn't make a lot of sense in my mind. So, same things as I was excited for before, I'm still excited for, but it would have been nice to see something, even if it was just a logo and a hopeful release date. But that's the whole medium has kind of shifted away from that. It was going away from it, especially with E3 even before the pandemic, and it is almost exclusively away from it. It'll be very interesting to see next year, assuming things are more back to normal. We thought it would be this year, but it's lingered in some of its effects. How these shows are viewed and supported, we'll have to wait and see on that one. Jake asked a good question, and I sat here and I wrote down names and I thought about it for a while, and I don't know if I have a great answer because it's a great question and it's not fair. And so he says, if you could invite any 4 JRPG characters to a dinner party, who would they be and why? And I said, of course, that's a great question. It depends on what kind of party, right? Are we talking about a royal ball? Are we talking about, just your everyday restaurant and having a couple people over for dinner? Are we talking about dude's night out? Are we talking about me show up with my top 4 waifus and hit the town? I mean, what kind of dinner party are we talking about? And he did clarify that just a simple dinner with friends, a fun night of conversation. And you are talking about myself being 40 years old and playing games most of my life. That's a lot of characters, my friend. Some that were fleshed out more than others that maybe you already know everything about. So while they would probably be a good dinner mate, you kind of feel like you already know them and there's nothing really to learn. So the best answers I could give was people that would probably be pretty fun, to enjoy dinner with, maybe a drink afterwards, whatever. And Estelle Bright is probably tops of the list, just a fun human being. Could take the conversation in any different direction, whether people get out of line, if she has to threaten them with her staff, or just joking around and having a good time. I think she is probably a obvious choice. And along those same lines and from the same universe, how could you not have Olivert? The debaucherous prince lends himself to a party like very few could. And if you don't know Olivert or Olivier, depending on the situation, right? You need to experience Trails in the Sky and then his continued adventures in The Legend of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel. He was in Crossbell too, so he's one of the few characters that has been in every single game in some way, shape, or form. The other two are kind of more; those were the obvious ones. and the other two would be a little more difficult. You're talking about a dinner party, so now you've eliminated all these silent protagonists, right? So Joker wouldn't be much fun. Yeah, he kind of mumbles a few words here and there, but as far as I know, he can't talk, or at least not very well. So there goes that your main character from Dragon Quest XI, Chrono. I mean, there's a lot of people that great heroes would be celebrated at a dinner party and probably could have a good time. As far as I know, they can't talk, so that kind of eliminates it. To just for somebody to have on your hip, I guess top waifu would have to be there. So that's tough. That'd be really tough, and I don't know where I'd go with it. Tifa's a pretty strong contender. I think Jade from Dragon Quest XI would be a fascinating person with her story, and she's a princess, so you got that going for you. I always thought that she was probably the most troubled character in that game, just from all that she went through, and then ultimately, in the end, the happy ending, right? So that, I guess, yeah, Jade probably a top one in there, and you would think maybe Cloud, but I'm not the biggest Cloud fan, so maybe he doesn't quite get. I know somebody that would be good. How about we throw Balthier in there from Final Fantasy 12? A very interesting character. Does that mean Fran has to show up? Right? The Sky Pirate, but always had a way with words, and I think he would be a pretty good dinner party too. And you could come up with 100 names that would be interesting. This is kind of like the, and he mentioned this too. It's like, they always ask this in sports, right? And so if you're a football player, you think of all the great football players. There's more than a few. What president would you want to have a conversation with? George Washington's only available for so many dinner parties. It's a loaded question. There's a lot of good answers there. I think there's some bad answers. Obviously, you don't want to have the too many villains show up at your party. I wouldn't want Sora to show up at my dinner party. I don't think that would be that much fun. Or you could kind of just keep all the Kingdom Hearts people away. Not the best dinner crowd. I wouldn't think, troublemakers. I don't know if you want Sid Highwind at your dinner party or Vincent Valentine. That's you Barrett, keep him far away from anything civilized, right? Go take care of your kid, Barrett. Jeez. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed those, that answer. They're not great ones, but it's the best I could come up with. Like I said, I racked my brain over and over, and no good answers were given. The other question I got from Hans. So he asked a good question, and it caused me deep thought. I read it last night, and it actually made me stay awake for longer than I wanted to. He says, are we going to see a resurgence in turn-based JRPGs anytime soon, or will the genre fade out? And then he's got like 100 dots after that. I want to look at this two different ways, right? In some ways, we have seen a great resurgence in turn-based JRPGs. Think about the epicness of the Legend of Heroes saga, turn-based. Yeah, with Chrono Seki, they're making some added changes. They still give you the option. Let's hope it never goes fully action-based, right? That series is hitting on all high notes, turn-based. We just had Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal kind of redefine how a turn-based JRPG should be, right? Still turn-based, but very fast and fluid, using all the buttons to your advantage. I feel like that's kind of the way going forward, a good way to do. Personally, I love the way Atelier Ryza 1 and 2's turn-based battle system works. More action, ATB style turn-based system. we're not really hurting for turn-based JRPGs. Dragon Quest 11, still turn-based. Had some different elements to it, right? Your characters could move around, but at its core, absolutely still turn-based. The Definitive Edition even more so. So we've got these heavy hitters that have shown and proved without a shadow of a doubt that there's a market for this and it's beloved. On the other hand, you've got Final Fantasy VII Remake, which took a beloved turn-based game and turned it into an action RPG. Tales has been action for a long time. That doesn't really count. It's still popular. But we get all these action RPGs. Look at what they're doing with Final Fantasy. It was MMO style with 12, right? 13 did some things we didn't really like. 14, straight up MMO. 15, it's an action RPG. And 16 looks to be a fast action RPG. So they have taken a genre that was turn-based, reinvented turn-based, did it to a high level, and went straight action. So that's discouraging. We've lost all these great turn-based JRPGs to the pages of history. Where's it going to go? It's a great question, and I think there will always be turn-based. In my heart, I hope there's always going to be, but it doesn't look great either. It's viewed as a gimmick of the past, and as long as us dinosaurs hold it up and keep supporting it and developers do that, but what comes along in 5 or 10 years? Is it going to go away? I certainly hope not. And I think it's proven that there is a market for it. I like to see advancements in it. Like I was doing this exercise, and as much as I enjoyed Remake and thought it was great, it doesn't take much imagination to stop that game and picture it turn-based, right? Instead of them moving around, which they can still do, think of Dragon Quest 11, where they still move, they paced, they got ready to attack, and then they attack, right? They don't have to line up in a row and stand still. I'm not talking about that type of turn-based system. They can be fluid, but take all those effects, all those attacks, and put an ATB system with it. And it doesn't take much imagination to clearly see it and see its beauty, right? So that's the game I want to see. I want to see the turn-based games that we grew up with in beautiful 4K, running at 60 frames a second. Not that they need to. They're not doing that much, but take that to its ultimate expression. We've always envisioned what that would be like. Instead, we get action RPGs. So I still feel like there's a great place for it. I'd love to see, I want to get my hands on Chrono Negaseki and see what it does in that system. See what Persona 6 does, right? Where do they go with it? I hope they saw what happened in Strikers and we enjoyed this, but this is not where we want our series to go to, right? So Hans, I hope that answers you. As long as there is a turn-based JRPG, which I feel like in order to tell a great story, you kind of need that system as well. So, while I love Tales of Arise, it can't be a 100-hour game, okay? Because that battle system is kind of so demanding of you and so fast-paced that doesn't lend itself to a very long game. Whereas your Dragon Quest 11s and Persona 5s can tell a 100-hour story because of the battle system. Hopefully that kind of makes sense to you. They just kind of piggyback each other much, much better. Your action RPGs tend to be shorter experiences. So that's where I hope these games go to. I'm going to be along for the ride, and I know you guys will be too until then, but let's hope it stays that way. That's all the questions I have. Like I said, there wasn't very many. Maybe I should have posted this last week to see if we could have got a few more come in by the wayside, but that's what I got. I want to speak for just a moment, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you're seeing me. I'm still struggling with looking at the camera, but we are recording these podcasts. We've always made video versions of the podcasts themselves, but this is something new that we're really going to try to do. I don't know if I can speak to it quite yet, but something's coming. And it's coming very soon, and it's coming from a name that you've heard of and know. And it could end up being kind of a competitor to YouTube. And that's something that actually we're going to be involved with here on the JRPG Report. So look for something in the next couple of weeks using video and doing something a little bit differently. And I hope you guys are a part of it, because I'm planning to be. When I started this podcast back in 2016, it was once a month and telling the news as it was, because I saw a void in the market. And I took some time off there for a bit and came back, and I've enjoyed it ever since then. But it's a brand that I want to grow, and I want you guys to grow with it as well into whatever it's going to be. And that's the next step. Where it goes after that, I don't know. I'm open to suggestions about what you like, what you want to see. We want to bring back the Sunday specials. That's kind of a part of this next step as well. What kind of things that those are going to entail. A lot of big changes are coming, and hopefully, okay, let me tell you this, it's going to stay ad-free. I'm not going to be reading ads. Now, in this new format, there may be some ads attached to it. Think like YouTube does when you're monetized. So, since I wasn't able to get monetized on YouTube, we're going to try a different route. But when you listen to the podcast, via your phone or other listening device, you're not going to hear any ads. Video may be a little bit different, but what I would really like to do is be listener supported. You guys tell me what you want, and I deliver on those results and give you a product that you want to invest in. Okay? But I need this to be a revenue source as well. So there's going to be some other ways of doing that. Okay? Like I said, tell me what you want. We'll see what we can do. But I'm excited about the brand and where it's going to go. And I thank you all for the journey so far. We're just getting started. If this is a 100-hour JRPG, we're just getting the party together, right? Who's coming with me? Because it's going to be an adventure. And I can't wait to see where it is. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. However you choose to digest this information. And we'll have some fun things coming up. I can promise you that. That's going to do it for the mailbag. Episode, 187. So we're getting close to 200. Let's think of something fun to do for 200 as well. That's going to be a big day. James Fisher signing off for the JRPG Report. Don't forget, get back out there and level up.